Hey. Okay, so this particular video is not something that I customarily do, and I'm only doing this in response to a lot of noise that I'm hearing online about this mass shooting in Las Vegas. So, and the problem is there are a lot of things that people are theorizing and saying involving astrology that are not necessarily useful or accurate or meaningful. And the whole point of being able to use astrology, and I'm doing this for you guys because I'm assuming you really want to understand astrology. One of the purposes of even being able to do this, being able to do something useful and meaningful with it that has value, that can help move people's lives forward. So if it doesn't do that, it's just narcissism and a lot of, excuse the phrase, a lot of mental masturbation, wasting time going over stuff for no particular reason at all, except to make yourself sound smart. So the first thing I want to address is something that was very disturbing. I've heard this platitude bandied about since the 80s. Yes, I'm that old. And that is this whole business about how we participate in the traumas and tragedies of our lives. And that there is this collusion between ourselves and the perpetrators of these things, as if somehow we have volunteered for these jobs or these horrible hurts and pains. The idea, of course, is that, on a very esoteric level, there are no victims. Okay, so the first thing is, yes, there are victims. There are people who are genuinely suffering and hurt and traumatized because of things that other people are doing that they did not ask to participate in. And we need to always keep that at the forefront of our mind, no matter how high-minded and spiritual and, whatever evolved you think you sound like. At the end of the day, suffering is real. And the whole business of being here is to help end and alleviate other people's suffering. So playing the blame the victim game from the esoteric, high-minded, evolved perspective is not alleviating or ending anyone's suffering. It's just callous, and it's conceited, and it is the worst form of spiritual narcissism. And I don't care if you channel this from little green men from Mars, or if your guru Ramtha told you this, or if your dead Uncle Fred channeled this to you in your dreams. And he says hi, by the way. It's not helpful, it has no meaning, and it has no purpose here. If it will not end or alleviate someone else's suffering, there's no point in it. Okay? So that's the first thing. The second is I don't generally get into a lot of mass tragedy charts because listen, unless we're going on a mass witch hunt and we can suddenly do like the whole, future criminal mind, thought criminals, where we know what people are thinking before they commit the crime. Unless we're going to start doing that, and with any accuracy, there's no merit in it. So one of the things that we have to understand is that when we're dealing with people, any single one of us can be put in a position where we are squeezed hard enough and twisted enough and broken enough that we could do the same things. And if you're not understanding this concept, I suggest you go back and read up on your classic literature and go back and read Lord of the Flies and get a sense of what humans are capable of without a lot of self-monitoring. So this business about being able to look at somebody's chart and identify markers for mental illness, for psychosis, for becoming a mass shooter, it's wrong. And it's not only wrong, it's an extreme misuse of what we do. Because when you conjecture that these things are possible and based on solely their natal chart, as if somehow the aspects in their chart were the sole reason that they're like this, what you're doing is discounting the fact that we all participate in this process and we all help make people crazy. So people may start out a little broken. We're definitely contributing to the crazy train. All right. The other thing is that you are assigning labels to people for things they're not even guilty of yet. And you're assuming that because you don't have these markers, somehow you're exempt. And that's not That's not fair or accurate either. Not to mention that you do a huge disservice to the person that you're labeling like this. It's extremely irresponsible for astrologers to take this position, and nothing winds me up more than that. So no, Virginia, you cannot find markers for mental illness in a chart. You cannot find markers for a pedophiliac, a pedophile in a chart. No, you cannot find markers for a rapist in a chart. No, you cannot find markers for this, that, other thing in a chart. It's more complicated than that. And at the end of the day, any single one of us could be that person. You know, given the right circumstances and the right conditioning and the right opportunities and all the wrong input, any single one of us could be that person. So, so there's that. And the last thing before we get into chart work is, you know, there's a lot of, I'm hearing a lot of, oh my God, he's so evil. He was so evil. He's so evil. So here's the thing. What he did was an awful thing. There is no confusing this. That was awful. Okay? But listen, after listening to stories about children getting shot up in churches and schools, it's a little hard to find extra tears for adults. So the reason we are all so horrified and confounded now is that this particular person does not fit the domestic terrorist profile that we have previously been operating with. So previously, when we thought of domestic terrorists, we thought of the lone wolf syndrome. We thought of, you know, the young man hopped up on testosterone and misunderstanding, you know, who got access to his father's guns and went and shot up churches and schools. You know, we thought of people who were so lost in their delusions about what their martyrdom would bring them, that they went and did these things in the name of some belief system or God or religion, whatever they're ascribing to, that gave them this sense of mission, you know, at other people's expense. When we thought of domestic terrorism, we thought of people who were just plain but crazy, just nuts, like had a history of mental illness, had a history of, you know, being unmanageable, and this was just the final break in a long series of cracks and breaks in their psyche. But this man didn't fit any of these bills. According to his brother, he was stable. He had money, so he wasn't struggling financially, you know, and for all intents and purposes appeared normal. And he wasn't young, and he wasn't, you know, hopped up on testosterone. If anything, he was an old guy, you know, just a normal old white guy that had a comfortable life. And nobody understands where this is coming from. And that's probably the most frightening thing of all, is that here is somebody that we don't think of as being crazy, and we don't think of as being, you know, the lone wolf, and certainly not somebody who is the other. You know, this, for the people who are the most horrified, the thing that is scaring them the most is the fact that this guy literally looks like he could be any one of them. This could be any one of their grandfathers or fathers. And there was no warning. There were no warning bells or signals. It just came out of nowhere. You know, oh my God, Grandpa Joe should shut up an entire concert. And I'm not saying this to be facetious, but I'm saying, like, we have a history of people losing their crap, you know, and hurting innocent people, children, shooting children in schools and churches. This is not new. We have issues, you know, and this, in this country, this is how they're being played out. So, because he looks like he could be any one of these people, now, of course, they're all horrified, because this is the last thing they saw coming. But for those people who have been paying attention, you know, he is part of the Pluto and Leo generation, and that is a lot of what we're going to talk about, that and factors that go into pushing people to their breaking point, and things that we can look for in an astrology chart, and what we're not going to find that will indicate mass shooters and mass murderers and pedophiles and rapists. If only it were that easy, right? So, this has been a horrible, horrible thing, but this is not the first of horrible, horrible things that we have dealt with, and this will not be the last for a while. We've got a lot of work to do. But the most important thing as astrologers, as people who are fans of astrology, the most important thing is that we do not add to the problem, and we could do that by not mislabeling people or assuming that astrology will tell us more than it actually does, because it won't. Astrology won't. Astrology will not tell you if you're going to be a saint or a sinner. It will not tell you if you're going to be a martyr or a murderer. what astrology will do is show us where the stress points are and when the breaking points are coming and where these things are most likely to experience the greatest stress tests. And also in this particular case, we're looking at a generational thing. So the roosters are coming home to roost. And for those of you, we're not going to get into politics, but I will say for those of you who have been following this, with the attack on Social Security being threatened, and with Medicare for old people, Medicare being on the chopping block, being carved up like a Thanksgiving turkey, and a whole lot of other things that are directly impacting the ability for baby boomers in the U.S. to live out their last years in any measure of peace of mind and comfort, with these things literally being targeted by a Congress that's populated by a bunch of extremely selfish and self-serving people. It should not come as, we saw this coming years ago, it should not come as any surprise that when you have somebody who literally has nothing left to lose, that their ability to pump, and lose it, is going to come with a very, very, very mighty price. So remember this, if you remember nothing else. The most dangerous person in the room is the person paying attention. Okay? And the most powerful person in the room is the one who has nothing to lose. So we got a bunch of old people, Pluto and Leo generation, who have been paying attention, and now they've got nothing to lose. So this may not be the last of this type of thing that we see. So be kind to each other, and don't misuse astrology, and don't label people. Don't assume that you know more than you actually do. And at the end of the day, one of the things, remember this EOL eclipse that we just had, both of them, this is very much about our joy and finding that place of joy and sharing that with other people to help heal them. We are going to go through a lot of tragedy and trauma and disaster and a whole lot of epic stuff, because we are on a course correction as a whole, as a humanity as a whole. We're on a giant course correction. So it's not going to get easier. But the most important thing, and anybody who's ever had to live through these things will tell you, is keeping your sanity and keeping your humanity intact. And part of doing that is finding that place where you have joy and embracing that and allowing that to keep you together, and being able to share that with other people to help heal them and help them keep their stuff together. Remember, in the concentration camps, and on plantation fields with slaves and in all sorts of other atrocious conditions, there was always that moment when someone would share a song, or they would, do something that would help lighten the burden of having to go through this. And those are the things that help us survive. So find your joy, embrace it, and share it, because this is the survival skill that they're going to need to be able to survive all this. And hopefully we can avert a lot more of these crises if we can get other people on board with us and maybe extend some of that healing to them as well. All right, now on the chart work.